So this is episode 29 of Living Out Loud. And we have Stephanie back again. Welcome,
We do.
Stephanie.
Hi.
And I wanted to this episode, and I don't mean this in a way to be like downer or anything like that, but like this episode is kind of gonna, like I said to Katie, fall under the umbrella kind of like struggle, but like struggles in different ways. So
Mhm.
I wanted to start, like I used to do that little like ripped from the headlines segment. And today I have to mention something that happened locally that's made national news. Katie and I live in the Buffalo Niagara region,
Yeah.
which obviously encompasses Niagara Falls, right? That's what this area is known for. Um,
Mhm.
Besides, chicken wings. And last night there was a
Right.
brief, well, I mean, can't leave that out.
That's true.
But last night there was a brief report. It was very brief. It didn't have any information that there had been an incident at Goat Island. Goat Island is one of the islands in the Niagara River that leads to the falls. And there wasn't really much information. It was like Niagara Regional Police, Niagara Falls Police, whatever. And so this morning it came out that a 33-year-old woman with her 9-year-old child and her 5-month-old child had jumped.
What?
So, yeah, so that came out today and they had their names and everything. And the reason I wanted to mention it is because more is going to come out. I mean, the investigation is pending. I haven't watched the local news or the national yet because it's not time for it yet, but it is nationally being reported at this point in time. The jump was intentional. That's what they've determined, that it was intentional. And so when I talk about struggle, okay, so I want to talk about like, and this all feeds into all the stuff we're going to talk about, right? Like mental
Yeah.
health struggles, um, considering she had a 9-year-old and a 5-month-old. Katie and I were kind of surmising postpartum. Um, and I was just thinking to myself last night when I first heard about it, because that was initially the first thing I thought was like postpartum or some kind of struggle. And I was thinking about how, postpartum is something we've all heard the term. We've heard horrible stories. I mean, Susan Smith, the one who drove her kids into the
Yeah.
lake how many years ago, she was
Yeah.
just released, right? Um,
Yeah.
from a mental health standpoint, I wish there was some way, not that they could, well, no, that when women leave the hospital after birth, that was some kind of agency or somebody or some kind of position that checked
That
in
links them. Yeah.
daily, then weekly, then bi-weekly, then monthly, that, you know what I mean? For like a year. I mean, or,
Mhm.
something, or I'm sure maybe there's a hotline. I didn't look into it, but like when you hear things like this and it's like, this is so preventable.
Yeah.
Um, and Katie, you had mentioned, we don't know if there was a domestic situation that might have led to this.
Yeah.
You
It might
don't
be.
know,
Sure.
'cause we don't know anything
Oh
yet.
no. Yeah.
But like that's what I mean about like struggle and mental health struggle, or maybe even just life stress
Right.
struggle.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, having 2 kids, maybe being stressed about finances, maybe thinking, okay, it would just be easier to, you know, not have any of us be in this way. You don't know. So
Yeah.
that's what I mean about like struggle, and this being under kind of like the headline of struggle. And everyone will have different reactions to this type of stuff. I'm sure there are people out there that don't understand postpartum, right? Who are probably like, who would hurt
Mhm.
their kids? Who would hurt their kids? I don't understand. Why would you do that? They're your kids. But these people are in such a mind space that that's not their thinking, right? Like that's not their thinking. It is like it's fear and it's panic and it's hormonal. I mean, we can say that. And another thing that Katie and I have broached in the past is actually doing an episode about like perimenopause and menopause and just the fuck over your hormones can do to you. I mean, it's
Yeah.
important. It's an important topic. It is.
Yeah.
And when your hormones either too low, too high, who knows, but it affects everything. And it's not just women, it's men too, but women coming out of childbirth or, like there's the levels are everywhere and they affect so much, like mentally, physically, everything. And so
Mhm.
this story, like we said, which has garnered national attention now, I would hope. I do feel like there's a stigma to postpartum. Like some people are like, oh, give me a break. No, not give me a break. And so I feel like there should be like support, like real instituted support for new mothers. And it doesn't matter what's socioeconomic. That's the thing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're single young moms. It doesn't matter because you don't know how it's going to affect you and you don't know what's going to do. So that's why I wanted to bring that up because it does fall under kind of this like umbrella. And we had mentioned at the very end of our last episode about talking about things like imposter syndrome and attachment theories. And those also too fall under kind of this same like umbrella, right? Like that attachment theories come from, if you, well, Katie, you can list them off the top of your head, I'm sure, but like that all comes from like a mental, emotional place, right? Imposter syndrome, same thing. And I'm gonna let you explain imposter syndrome because you'll do it way better than me until your Instacart order gets here and you have to get your frozen cake. But like
6 minutes.
arriving in 6 minutes. So, okay. So, and in regard to stuff like this, right? And reactions to stuff like this, when you hear something like that as a mother, right? You have a visceral reaction as a mom to hearing about someone who could bring themselves to actually do that and not to be, well, to be realistic, to jump, to jump. I mean, to make the decision to just do it. And everyone has different reactions to that. And some may be more empathetic than others, and some may be, whatever. But here's my quote, and this is one of my favorites. And this was the one that like kind of like poked at me today, which is don't expect yourself in others. So your reactions, how you would handle a situation, no matter what that situation is,
True.
the words you would use or not use, right? You can't expect yourself in other people. And so when you say to yourself, oh my gosh, that's horrible. That is so sad. That's so awful. And then you hear someone else say, well, I know what the hell she was thinking. What's her problem? Why would she? And then you get upset, right? So like, and there's so many situations in our lives where that happens, where you're like, how could you not see X, Y, Z? Well, it's because you can't expect yourself in others.
You know what's so weird is that's the second time someone mentioned that quote this week to me.
Really?
Wow.
Mhm.
Right. Again, I'm totally on and feeling the vibe without even knowing it was there.
There
Woo,
you go.
thank you. Steffi's giving me the snaps. But I mean, it's a great quote because it applies to so much.
Oh yeah.
It does.
It applies to so much. And so that's my quote for today. And so here we are now about to embark on our third episode with Stephanie. And we're gonna come back in with imposter syndrome. We're gonna come back in with attachment theories. And I have a question that's for Katie and Stephanie in regards to Stephanie's personal situation, which she has shared. And you don't have Stephanie, you don't have to answer this, but I'm
Okay.
inquiring minds want to know. So like after your life situation and where you are now, which is in a great position, respected position, married, children, okay? We need to bridge that gap between your earlier life and this life with the question of, did you find it hard to trust people? And did you find it hard to believe in yourself after your early
Yeah,
life
trust yourself when you're old. Yeah.
and to
So
where
I'm
you
gonna
are now.
excuse myself on that point and let Stephanie talk, and then
Okay.
I will be listening. But
Okay.
Okay. She will
Go for
also
it.
be unloading frozen items. Okay. Hit it.
Um,
Do you see what I like there? Because there's a piece missing
yeah. Yeah.
from where
Um,
you were to where you are now.
it's interesting. And I was thinking about this when after we had ended our last episode and we said we were going to kind of talk about this. It's interesting because I feel like a part of me, a part of the younger person, the little Stephanie who had to grow up in that situation, even during those difficult, stressful, strenuous times when I felt very low or felt very unseen or felt very endangered, like it was and fragile and just kind of like miserable. And there was always a part of me that was so frustrated because I always felt like, I mean, and I feel like a lot of people can relate to this for probably different reasons, but I found myself a lot of the times looking for paperwork and things around the house to show that I was adopted because I felt
Oh,
so very different from my entire family that I was like, there is no way this is the family I'm supposed to be with. Partly because a lot of the times it was miserable and it was stressful and it was painful, but a lot of the times I just always felt like alien to that group, they weren't like they didn't feel like my tribe. You know what I mean?
right.
I had ideas and thoughts and dreams, and I had a very, very
Mhm.
vivid imagination. And I think most kids growing up in situations like that where there's some poverty and there's some abuse and there's some neglect always fall back on their imaginations to entertain themselves, to kind of escape that kind of a thing. I used to love movies and I used to make up stories. And I remember my brother and sister would always tell the stories now from time every now and again about how our cable was always off. And so, because we couldn't pay the bill. So I would have the TV on, it would just be white snow, and I'd be behind the television reliving episodes of shows we used to like Welcome Back Kotter or Three's
Oh,
Company or
yeah.
something like that. And
Yeah.
they thought that was the most hilarious thing. We talk about that. And sometimes we tell people stories like that, and they'd be focused on was how awful it was that we didn't have television on. But we thought it was the coolest thing that we would watch so much of it that we reenact and make our own entertainment. So for me, when all that stuff was going on, sometimes I'd be so frustrated and miserable looking at my mom going, what are we doing? What's happening? And a lot of the times I had interests in things that were very different from the rest of my family. They used to tease me. I used to get picked on about it a lot. So, for example,
Right.
Barbra Streisand is one of my favorite singers. I've loved Barbra Streisand since I was a kid. I have no idea why. I've loved Broadway show tunes and theater shows since I was a kid. So I
What
used
about
to
A
listen to her
Star
all
is
the time.
Born? The A Star is
Stars
Born
Born.
soundtrack?
Oh my God, yes. Oh
I
man,
could do that all day
the,
long.
the Broadway soundtrack. She did a Broadway album where she did all these Broadway show
Yes,
tunes.
my parents
Amazing.
have it. Oh
Yes,
my
I mean,
God.
yes,
Yes.
I love all of that. And so that was not something my family was into. And I didn't get that, And I mean, there was a large period of my life. It is so funny because my mother used to hate it so much, where I chose to speak with a British accent when I was like 11 or 12 years old. I went through these weird phases. I don't know. It was just a weird thing. And I can tell you all along, whether it was things I was writing, things I was into, things I daydreamed about that I wanted to do or I wanted to be, I felt like I was not born into the right situation or the right family because the desires and the interests that I had didn't fit. And I was
Right.
being treated in such a way where it was so opposite of what I thought I was supposed to be that I felt like something got mixed up at the hospital. This is not right. Why would I have these ideas and hopes and
Right.
dreams? I'm living in this situation where I'm in a box where they say there are no hopes and dreams. What's happening? And so I always had, and my father never liked that about me. He would always say that I always look smug, and he would always be mad. Even if he'd yell at me about something, like, put your shoulders down and why don't put your head down. Because I would always walk with my head held high, like, whatever, you bastard, I don't give a shit, kind of a thing. And he'd
Well,
be
like
like,
inner
put your head down,
confidence
don't.
at a young
Yeah,
age.
yeah.
Like that's
Yes,
awesome.
it was such a weird thing. But he hated that. He hated that about me. And being a young kid, I didn't understand that until I got older. But I've always kind of had this thing about me where I was like, I'm supposed to be doing something else. I can be doing something else. This situation just doesn't feel right. I didn't submit internally. I felt like I did a lot of the time because I just felt like helpless, like I didn't know how I didn't have a way to, my little jobs I had when I was 13, 14. And, I was like, that's not, how am I going to live? How am I going to take care of my family? How am I going to get my mom out of this situation? Because she was in such a fog. She was just like, totally like, I don't know, indoctrinated into the situation. And this is how it is. And so I did feel helpless in that sense, but it wasn't enough for me to just kind of choke out that flame and say, just submit and give in. I didn't do that.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of why, like literally days after she disappeared, something just snapped in me. And
Mhm.
that thing that kind of had me walking like I had 50-pound weights around my ankles and I was just trudging through my life. And I was thinking to myself, I'm not going to make it to age 25, and, this kind of thing. I just snapped out of it and I just got going. And I was like, I got to do this. I got to take care of my family. I got to do this and that. And all of a sudden, so many things that I didn't think I knew or learned or I was scared to do. Because when you get snatched out of your life situation like that and you've already kind of been limited, and then you get thrust into the so-called quote unquote real world where you know nothing about how to navigate the space. There's no Google and no computers and nothing about that. So trying to figure out how to pay bills and how taxes work, how to write a check, and how to, how leases work for apartments and all, I mean, all these
Right.
big level things out of the blue where you have no transition, no support, nobody to teach you. I was like moving and shaking. I'm like, I'm gonna figure this damn thing out. I'm gonna do this. I was out there with my newspaper. I tell my kids all the time, yeah, when I looked for jobs, I used to circle the classified ads, call places from the local payphone, or go take a taxi cab or walk to a place and knock on the door and say, hey, are you guys still hired to get an application? They're all looking at me like, what? I'm like, yeah, there was no
Mhm.
Indeed. There was
It was better back then, in my opinion. It was better back then. All the
yeah,
jobs were right there in the newspaper. You didn't have to
yeah,
do like Indeed or any of this
right.
stuff. It was
Logging
all
in,
right there.
searching.
And you could
Yeah,
call. There was a phone number. You could talk to a person,
person,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
And so
yeah.
you had like, okay, so your situation, and Katie and I have spoken about this, coming out of an abusive situation. And Katie, I think these might have been your words. Sometimes when you're in an abusive situation, like you said, there's really like two avenues. You become an advocate or you become the situation,
Mm,
Yeah.
right?
mm,
Mhm.
That was, I think, one of your comments. So it sounds like Stephanie used her situation for drive and
yeah,
initiative. And I'm not gonna live like this. This isn't gonna be my
Mhm.
life. This is not, without really knowing you were
yeah,
doing that. You
yeah.
were just kind of like subconsciously building by steps
Mhm.
a better life for yourself that was not going to end in that,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
not actively saying like to yourself, I'm not going to be that. I'm going to do that.
yeah,
You just had this like inherent drive. And
yeah,
like you said, you felt different from the rest of your family because you had these hopes and you had these dreams and they never actually got crushed
yeah.
by any
They
of
were
the
just
things
put
that
on.
happened to you,
Yeah, and
which is amazing.
my mom contributed to that in a lot of ways, and it wasn't until years later that I figured that out. From time to time, I'd had a couple of conversations with my brother and my sister. We talk about things, you kind of rehash, you remember things, and I kept thinking, and I'd have these moments, these aha moments, where I'm like, oh wow, I remember that. And being on the other side of things, I'd be like, man, that was really important. There were a lot of times when my father was emotionally and mentally abusive, where he would say horrible things and put us down and just be messy. And there were several instances where he would do something that most parents who care about their kids would not do. And my mother would come behind him and clean it up. Um,
Oh.
not say, oh, it's okay, and that's just him, kind of not make excuses for him. She
Right.
would fix it. So I'll give you an example. I remember I was really into art too. I used to love to draw, and I wanted to do comic books and all that stuff, but I wasn't very good. I wasn't great. I was okay. But I remember doing a drawing, and I don't remember what it was. It was like a horse or a rabbit. It was something I drew. It was in middle school, and I got a little award or a sticker or something from the teacher because it looked really cool. We had to basically take an animal or something and trace it and then draw it in and everything. I think it was a horse. And I remember being so proud of it because a lot of people, all the other kids were even like, kids who I didn't think even liked me were like, that looks awesome, or that's cool, or that's awesome. And I thought, hey, oh, okay, yeah, look what I did. That's pretty cool, right? So I bring it home And I had it on the table and I showed my mom and she thought it was great and everything. And it, we kind of went on about our day or whatever. And then sometime later he shows up and I'm walking through to go to the kitchen and he's sitting at the table and he goes, "Who did this trash? You did this? This is horrible." He's like, "I don't know why I gave you a sticker for this. This is straight up, this is shit. This, keep trying." And he just threw it back on the table and he just walked off. So, that wasn't the first time he's done something like that. So it wasn't as much of a shock or a stab as it could have been. I just was kicking myself because I should not have left it on the table. I was like, why are you leaving it on the table? I hate him so much. You know what I mean? It's like, I just don't even want him to acknowledge my existence. Just don't, and so that really frustrated me. And I remember I was angry because I left it out and he got to see it and he got to put his stink on it. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I threw it in the trash.
Oh.
The next day, my mother had it. She took it out of the trash. And when I came in from school, she was back on the table and she says, "Come here." And she says, "This thing was awesome. And you messed it up. Why'd you throw it in the trash?" She says, "I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what he says. He's not a fucking art critic. He doesn't know anything." He's like,
Damn
"Don't
right.
you listen to him." She's like, "This was good." She says, "Don't ever let anybody tell you that what you're doing is not good." She's like, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, what you think. She's like, "Don't throw your work away." And she gave it back to me and made me take it upstairs. Now it was a quick fleeting kind of a moment, kind of a thing, but we had several things like that, where she's not going to be able to check him in the moment about that.
Right.
But she would circle back to us and try to correct these things. And at the time, it didn't dawn on me until I was much older. But when I think back on situations like that, there were a lot of those moments of her kind of coming behind the scenes and saying, "Forget that. This is okay," or "This is right," or "Yes, you can go." And she would sneak around and get us money to go to trips or lunch and do little things that he would say we couldn't do. We had these little plots and schemes where it was like, it doesn't matter what he says. When he's not looking, this is what we're going to do, kind of a thing, So letting us play sports or be in band or do little things that he said we
Or
couldn't
your
do.
secret telephone in the closet
Yeah,
because he
yeah.
wouldn't let you have a telephone and your
Yes.
mom got one.
Yes, exactly. So exactly, that's a perfect example. So it wasn't so much that she fully submitted to that situation and just gave in and said, "This is our life, this is how it is." It was more, I tell you, I feel like I still to this day, I felt like she was a prisoner looking for a way to escape, but was afraid to take the very many escape routes that I believe were given to us over that time period.
Mhm.
And I'm still very angry at her. I get welled up when I think about it. I'm still very angry at her right now today because I feel like she would have still had her life or not have lost it, at least to that situation, if she had just. And I hate to use these words because I feel like it's such a weird thing. I do feel like she was strong and I do feel like she was courageous and brave and I do feel like she battled and fought for her family, but at the same time, she didn't do it on the level or the way she needed to keep us from being in that situation or to save herself. And I just can never quite resolve those two things. How can you be strong, courageous, and brave and fight for your family, but then keep your children in an abusive situation and not take the steps you need to get out, and then you lose your life? It's like, how do I
Do you
resolve that?
think that she had, and this circles it back, right? Do you think she had her own version of imposter syndrome, her own version of
Yeah.
trust issues in other people? Like, I mean, okay, today is the day I'm going to leave the house and go to my neighbors and say,
Mhm.
"Okay, this is what's happening and I need your help because this is what I want to do." And then that fear of them being like, "What are you talking about?
Yeah.
No, we don't
Yeah.
want to get involved."
Yeah.
Or her being like, "I'm going to go and I'm going to apply, I'm going to get a better job and I'm going to like do it on the sly and I'm going to be able to get the money to get them out of here." And
Yeah.
then say to herself, "Oh God, I'm never going to get this job.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to give it to
Well,
me."
Doubting yourself,
let
doubting
me
yourself.
interject. So
Yeah. And there was
let me
pride
use
issue in there
this.
too.
Yeah, let me use this analogy for you, Stephanie. So when you go to war, right? You're a soldier and you're going to war, and you're in survival mode, and you are just trying to stay alive every day, right? It doesn't occur to you to strategize your escape. That part of
Mm.
your brain is not working. You're in fight or flight. So that means primarily all your blood is, to your heart, pumping adrenaline half the time. So you're not strategizing.
Right.
The idea of getting out of that situation is way beyond what you have
Yes.
to deal with on a daily moment.
You
So a
just
lot of
survive.
times,
Yeah.
so a lot of times when you are in the constant cycle of trauma, there is no there. Your brain says, yes, we need to strategize to save ourselves. And your body says, I can't do that right now. I'm trying to breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I felt that sometimes too. Yeah.
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 Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then
That's
there's
why
that
you,
I'm sorry, then there's that book, and I've never read it, but other people have mentioned it to me. Body Keeps the Score.
Hmm.
And it's about stress and abuse and angst and whatever, and how it affects people physically. And then you get into like them feeling physically drained, fatigued, like they really
Yeah.
can't make the move.
Yeah.
And then you get analysis paralysis with the people that think, and they actually think themselves out of
Out of it.
being able to
Mhm.
do something, and then always feeling kind of like somewhat ill or like malaise or, tired. And the thought sometimes of digging out to them is like insurmountable,
Yeah.
right? Because, the steps that it sometimes takes that some people just do, and some people, like we've talked about, in one episode, I think we were talking to your friend, our last one, who is the advocacy, DV
oh, Amy.
advocacy,
Mhm.
about, like steps to get out. And she said, she's like, and I tell them,
Pre-plan.
make
Yeah.
a list, make a plan. And we were like, but sometimes it takes people 3 weeks, 3 months to make the list because they are paralyzed,
Mhm.
and other people don't understand that. And it's like, but you have to understand what's going on in their head, because they're saying to themselves, what if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? Right? Because then I'm going to find myself in a worse situation because I tried to do something. He or she's going to find out, and then I'm going to be punished. I mean, like there's so, like we always talk about, there being so many layers to it, right? So like, even though your mom worked, like you said, she might have not had the confidence in herself to think that she could go for another position and get hired for it, and make more money and squirrel it away, and have this secret plan, because like we've talked about, imposter syndrome, thinking you're not good enough, feeling like you're fooling people, the whole fake it till you make it, right? Like all those things that people put out there, when these people don't realize that they do have it in them, but it's been, for lack of a better term, eaten out of them. So they
Mhm.
don't believe in themselves and they don't trust anybody. And like, even like when you said when you were at Pace and these people were being so good to you, but one of your first thoughts was, what do they
Yeah.
want from me?
What's up?
Mhm.
Yeah.
What do they want from me? Why are they
Yeah.
doing this?
Yeah.
Because I
So
don't think your
I
first
want,
thought was they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart, right? Because
no.
you didn't grow up with people doing things out of the goodness of their
Mm-mm.
heart.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
why would you trust that?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Stephanie, I wanted to go back to the attachment stuff and trust.
Mhm.
So as you were, you know, getting yourself out of that situation, and even to this day, um, what are the types of personalities that you find you gravitate to and trust easier? And which ones naturally set your alarms off of it?
Wow, that's interesting. I, for me, I find myself constantly always kind of like observing and analyzing people and trying to figure out who they really are or what they're really about, because I know that they're not always going to present with their true, authentic self, a lot of the
Mhm.
times, because I mean, you don't, until you know people, you're like, you kind of keep some things guarded. So depending on the situation, but for me, I do like people who speak their mind, who speak their opinion,
Correct.
who are um, not afraid all the time of what other people think. They're not not like robots who just fall in line and do what everybody else is doing and follow the same trends. Those types of people attract me, and I'm very curious and interested about those types of people. Personality wise, I am not. I personally, people work with me, people who know me when I'm out, they think I'm an extrovert. They're always shocked when I score on a personality test and things and it says I'm an introvert. They're like, no way, yeah, you're not an introvert. I'm like, no, I'm totally an introvert. Me and my husband are such homebodies. We just want to be at home in pajamas, watching movies, eating ice cream, playing video games, and just be in. People ask us to go out and we're
That
like,
sounds great.
oh no, we can't, or we agree to go out. And right after we have to go out, it's like a chore. We're like, you sure you want to go? I want to go if you want to go. Okay, I'm getting the car keys, started up the car. Do you want to go? And then we start thinking about excuses we can
We're
make to
doing
not
it,
go.
right?
And we're like, I guess we're going. And then we have a little code. So it's like, okay, after an hour or two, you give me the signal. And then we're like, okay, guys, you got to go. We are such homebodies. We're such introverts. And because it's exhausting, I feel like a lot of the times to just be out there and just trying to engage with people and not appear like, I could be doing something better. I always feel like a lot of times I have to entertain certain types of people. People want to be entertained. People who I think are more authentic in themselves and just kind of chill and comfortable with who they are don't need to be entertained. And they're okay with, every now and again, there needs to be some silences. And they're okay with that, and those are the types of people that I'm good with. I'm like, yeah, my type of people. I might slip off into a daydream while we're talking and it'd be quiet for 5 minutes. And you're like, what are we talking about? What are we doing? So I need people who are okay with that kind of, that kind of environment. It's hard, I think today in general, just to know who to trust. People used to say all the time, oh, trust is earned, trust is earned. You have to earn the trust, you have to earn the trust. But I think today now people are more like, you can work really hard to earn it, but I have to decide if I'm going to give it to you or not. You may have even earned it and I still may not give it to you because it's mine. I don't know. I need more. It feels like they need more and more and more people to really feel like they can trust them because there's so many layers to it. And so for me, I mean, it's such an interesting thing because I come across to people as very engaging and very trusting. People will even say to me, oh my God, you are so trusting. You just said it, but I'm totally not. It's like, I have there are a lot of firewalls, so I let people get through the first 2 or 3 and they think, oh, I'm in. It's like, this is cool. And they don't realize they're about to run into like a 6-inch thick steel case, safe that they got to do
You're
crack.
definitely not.
Yeah, with all these combinations, and then there's the 12 Brooklyn door locks behind it. Yeah, it's a whole thing going on here. And they always think they know me, but they really don't, because who I really, really am is I keep very much guarded and protected. And it's only a small amount of people that I'm able to truly show that to, because certain levels of vulnerability, I believe, make me appear weak or make me a target, or again, I still tend to suspect that people want something from me and eventually they're going to reveal that. And so when they do finally reveal that, what I have given away up to that point is not that much that I have to feel like I've been violated and taken advantage of, because I kept the good stuff. I gave you the generic Oreos,
Right.
kept the real name Oreos in the pack, kind of a thing, so it's like, yeah, have some, I ate all your Oreos, and you're like, ha, sucker, no, you didn't. Here's the real ones. You had the fake ones. So it's kind of like that kind of a thing, and there are layers to it. And so it's interesting, and I love learning about people. I love talking to people, engaging with people, and watching people, observing people. But yeah, I feel like my past and where I've come from and what I've seen and what I've gone through really has allowed me to create several layers of these guardians that protect certain components of myself, just because I'm so afraid I'll go back to that
Do you
moment.
think that's like, okay, so I'm just going to go back to attachment theories, do you think, Katie, being the expert in the room, do you find that to be like a little avoidant, but avoidant in the protective sense? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, she's not giving all of her Oreos. She's definitely keeping some, but like all the firewalls, like she's presenting a certain, and in no way am I criticizing you, Stephanie, because
It's fine. Bring it.
totally
I'm okay
fucking
with
get
that.
it.
Yeah.
But is it a tad avoidant in the sense of one of my favorite expressions, which is I'm gonna quit before I'm fired type thing. Like I'm gonna keep this little bit of myself that you're not gonna see and you're not gonna touch. And you're
You know
never,
what my
never
my
touch it.
frustration with the attachment types is that they're
Pretty
all
restrictive.
expressing a deficit, right?
Mhm.
We don't express we don't talk about all the different healthy things we talk about, reactive attachment disorder. We talk about dependent personality disorder. We talk about avoidant personality disorder, but we
Yeah.
don't talk about, look, in all reality, if you trusted everybody, Stephanie, that would not be smart
No.
due to your history,
Right.
not just in general, but what you learned. And I think that we walk around thinking trauma makes us broken, or it has done these damaging things. Guess what? You have a very refined ability to, one of the reasons you're drawn to people who are genuine is because that's trustworthy. And the reason you're drawn to people who are interested in what other people think is because that's a performance. And you never know what's underneath that. And so you don't have time for that. So you're going to go right for that. So those dependent personalities, would I say that Stephanie is dabbling in an avoidant personality? Absolutely not. What I see is somebody who has taken the information that they learned, and I won't say that negatively. You have a refined gift. How you got it's another story. And I think you sounds like you use it just fine. Now,
Well,
if
so
you
that's,
were, and it's strategic. Now, if
Yes.
it was causing difficulties in your life, the way you were choosing to interact with people, then we might look at it being a deficit. But actually, it's the opposite. So it's a strength.
Yeah.
well, it sounds like it's a strength because she has an admirable position at school that helps people and also interacts with people. She's not avoiding people, right? She's not avoiding them. She's full on facing people and went into a career field that helps and serves, which we've
Mhm.
talked about before, that there's no purpose in life without serving some population in some way. Um, Clearly, she was able to navigate romantic, trusting relationships because she is married. Clearly, would love to know about your husband, by the way, and bring him on sometime. Clearly, she was not avoiding repeating a cycle because she had her own children.
Mhm.
So it sounds to me like incredibly enough after a difficult, not even just childhood, teenagehood, early 20hood, that she went on to be successful in relationships, period. Like interpersonal relationships with coworkers, students, husband, children, friends. Dude, I totally get when you make plans with someone and then you're like, oh shit. Like, and you're hoping someone cancels. And then they do, and you're like,
I
yes.
hate it
I mean,
so
like,
much.
I love going out, but sometimes you're like, oh, why did I say yes? But like,
Yeah.
only because when we get older, we love our houses. That's all there
Yes.
is to it. I mean, you just do.
That's gotta be it.
I mean, it's a
When
thing.
you're
I
a
mean,
baby, you love your houses, and when you get older, you love your
Love
you
your
love
house.
your house. You love your bed, you love your couch. But I mean,
Yes.
like, but she obviously successfully navigated interpersonal, trusting, close relationships that somebody else who would have been in her situation as a child, teen, early 20, never could have done. I would have wound up alone or bitter or violent or a criminal. I mean, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
so
ton of things.
what's
Yeah.
what's the secret? Like, what did was it built into her because her mother did do this cleanup after the dad that instilled in her something positive and good, that drove out the bad? And what's the answer? That she
What
never
do you
felt like
think
an
the answer
imposter.
is, Stephanie? I mean, like, why did you, because it's always a crapshoot. I see the people who are the product, and Well, we talked a little bit about it, you know, the difference between learning about your situation. You have to reenact it or you got to learn about it, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, I wish I could bottle it. If I could bottle it and sell it, I'd be a billionaire right now because I wish I could
You can
because
only advertise on
right.
this podcast, just so you know.
Noted. Got
We
it.
require
So,
rights.
I mean, I wish I knew because and you know, and I'll say this very generally that my sisters, I don't want to put too much out there, but I feel like she didn't fare as well as me coming out
Okay,
of
I
the
was going to
situation.
ask a
And
little bit about that.
that could have been our age differences when this all happened, or it could have been something else. I don't know. I feel like when I think back about it, or when I'm talking about the situation, even now, sometimes when I'm talking about it, I feel like I'm detached from it in a weird way. Like I know it was me. I know I went through it. And if I go too deep and I kind of describe more very specific situations, and I definitely feel it. It kind of takes me back there. So then the emotions kind of come up. But when I'm speaking about the situation in general, and sometimes I see people's reactions, and if I'm doing a presentation in an audience or things like that, and there's this look of horror and sadness, and I'm thinking, why y'all looking like that? So I'm okay. I made it. I'm good, right? But I feel somewhat detached from it. It feels like I'm talking about a television show, or I saw it in a movie or something like
About
that.
somebody,
But
you're
I
telling a
know it was
story.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah, it feels like
like
I'm telling
I
somebody
felt that
else's
way
story.
too, right?
Yeah.
Like I felt that way too when I've told when if I haven't talked to somebody in a while and and I knew them. I mean, like when we started this podcast, right? And I had some friends from college and they were like, "Oh my gosh, you're doing a podcast?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I like sent them like the first episode. And my one friend contacted me, and I think I mentioned this before, and she was like, I am such a bad friend. And I said, why?
Mm,
Oh,
And she was like, because I didn't know. And I said, I didn't tell you.
yeah.
And she was like, but Ellen, holy shit. And I was like, yeah, but
Yeah.
I feel like I'm talking about somebody else. I don't feel like I'm talking about myself.
Yes. That's how I feel a lot of times. But here's the weird part. When I was still living in the situation, and I don't know if that was my way to kind of escape from it, but I also a lot of the times felt that way. And I've definitely felt like an imposter because I know people knew, people in the neighborhood knew, people know, people talk and all those kinds of things. But when I went to school, especially when I got to high school, um, I tried to pretend to be somebody different than what I was. And that might also be why, for that year or so in middle school, I had that British accent. I don't know what was going on there. It's like,
Oh, she had
it's
a
like
British accent. You missed that part.
I
She
did
was
such
British for like 2 years.
I totally was British. My mother would be like, "Are you kidding me? Stop talking like that." And I'm like,
And
"But
she also loves Barbra
crikey,
Streisand.
mom,
That was the
mother."
whole other thing. We had the whole Barbra Streisand conversation, which don't
so
rain
you
on my
were
parade is one of her best songs.
so
Yeah.
you were a
So
British musical lover at the age
Yes,
of
British
it was
Barbra
very odd.
Streisand
Yes,
loving,
Barbra Streisand, classical music, all kind. I mean, it was crazy. I don't know, but
you actually sound a lot
somehow
like my gay male friends. British accents.
and and I don't know if you heard it, I was always expecting to come across some paperwork, some documents, something saying that I was
That I
adopted.
heard
They
that you were
she
stole
was
adopted.
me. They stole me from
Mm-hmm.
somebody. Something was really wrong. And so whatever that was, it became like a bubble that despite being in all of that chaos and all of that sadness and all of that constant sense of stress and scared fright, I still remember being in bed and just being scared and waiting for the sun to come and and then going to school, but then afraid to go to school and then afraid to come home. I mean, just living through that the whole time, there was something around me that was keeping it from fully taking me over, fully becoming this sort of like, I don't know, like it's like an alien type thing where you feel like if you're not careful, it can get through and it can permeate and it can take you over, kind of like the body snatchers, right? But somehow or another, I was still able to still protect and be me inside of this skin, this uniform, this suit that was dealing with all of this stuff and in this very inhospitable environment. I had something about me that was keeping me from believing that this was my life and this was meant to be. This can't be it. No way. I got to find this paperwork. I got to go and look outside at the stars and let the aliens come and beam me up Every time, yeah, something is up, something's
I gotta
wrong. I'm a
find my British
superhero.
family that
Yes,
loves
this British
theater,
family's
because they
looking for
know they're
me.
out there.
Barbara Streisand's wondering where her long
She's
lost secret
wondering where
daughter
you
is.
are.
I'm like, I'm
I
here.
mean,
There was something there that
Barbara,
just
come get
it
me.
kept me from fully submitting to that situation. And that's why when you were talking, you were talking about that book, and I felt that sort of heaviness, that sort of like I'm inside of this thing and I'm trapped and I know I need to get out and I know I can get out and I should get out and this is what I should do and I should prep and have stuff ready and have a plan. But I felt so stuck and heavy and I was dragging my butt. And I believe, looking back now, I failed high school on purpose. Come my senior year, I did horrible things and I had the ability to do my work. I had the ability to do the things, and the things that I loved to do, I was very good at and I was very engaged in and band and all of that kind of stuff. But when it came to the schoolwork and it came getting closer and closer and they're talking about, oh, you got to get ready, you're going to be graduating, you're going to be getting out on your own soon and you got to find a career and you're going to move away and everybody's talking about what they're going to do and be and all that stuff. It made me sick. And I didn't understand why back then. I'm not 100% sure now, but every time I go back and think about it and revisit it, I kick myself. I'm like, why did I graduate high school? What is wrong with me? I didn't do certain papers. I didn't turn stuff in. I was miserable. I was having all these weird episodes, and I don't know
Like
what
rebelling, maybe,
like I was rebelling. I didn't want to do it, but I know part of it was a fear of growing up, a fear of being an adult, a
Yeah,
fear of
Stephanie, it's
having to
just what we
leave.
were talking. Yeah, we were
Yeah,
just, it's exactly the same thing. I mean, you were in survival mode. The idea of strategizing about your future made you ill because
it
you were
did.
just trying to get by. So, I
Yeah,
mean, they're forcing you, come here and let's talk about your career plans. You
yes,
can barely breathe at night. What? So you have one body and it can only, if all of that is invested in surviving, you're literally going to feel nauseous when someone's like, stop surviving. Let's talk about the 5-year plan.
yes.
Yeah.
like now we have to do
That's it.
this. And it's
That's
like,
it.
well, I can barely do the basics. So
Yeah,
now you're asking me to do something that's way outside of my realm because I
yeah,
don't have that foundation. Like,
When
how am
they
I going to?
talk about, children that can't concentrate and things of that nature in classrooms, that they're distracted because of their home life, that's what they're talking. It's
yeah,
not because, oh, I'm thinking about, you know, yes, is there a component I'm thinking about if there's going to be food tonight? Sure. But they're
yeah,
distracted because they're in survival mode all the time.
yeah, yeah,
They don't have time to listen about, American history. It doesn't matter.
yes,
Doesn't mean
yes.
anything to them.
Doesn't mean
Right? I
anything.
mean, like that seems like a luxury. Oh,
Yeah,
talking about American
It
history
is.
or talking
yes,
about college
Education
plans.
is a luxury when
yes,
you are just trying to survive. I mean,
yes,
think about it. You
absolutely.
are in a panic room and you know that the devil's out there waiting for you, and there's somebody in the room with you going, okay, let's
Yeah,
work on your algebra.
yeah. It's
And I
exactly
mean,
how it was.
yeah, like
It's exactly how it felt.
it probably seems
It's
completely,
absurd.
Yeah, it seems ridiculous.
it seems stupid,
Trivial.
right?
It's
Like,
trivial. It's
It
trivial.
is.
I just want to go home and not have my dad explode on me. But
Yes,
you want to talk about Euclidean geometry that I could give a shit
did
about.
about exactly.
Nor do
On a
I
good
care how
day.
many
Yeah.
angles
Yes,
are in a isosceles triangle. I
yeah,
mean, like
And then that's
we
when they talk about education being stolen from folks that are in those situations, because even if you find something, you're like, I really like that. I want to learn about that. It's
yes.
stolen from you because you don't
It's taken.
have the resources to even.
Yes,
So I'm so glad you hung in there with band and stuff, and because that would, I'm sure, felt was a beautiful escape,
it
and it was
was.
a safe place to escape,
It was. It
because
was
nobody
amazing.
was demanding anything of you. It was just music makes you be present, right?
Yes,
And
yeah,
that's it's not
yeah. And there
asking
was
you to move out your
camaraderie and
future. Yeah.
yeah, there was fun and for those moments when we went on those trips and we went to the band competitions and stuff, the hot chocolate and the blankets and it'd be cold and we'd be competing and we'd be playing our music and going after the other bands. So it would be amazing. And then you get on the bus headed back. And as you're getting
yeah.
closer and closer to home, there's this dread and you're like, oh shit. Okay. You know what
And
I mean?
then
It was
probably
like
some
this.
guilt because you enjoyed it, right?
Yes,
Some
yes,
guilt
so much.
because you're like,
So much.
oh my God, I had fun.
Yeah,
And I guess I'm not supposed to have fun. And, you
Yeah.
know, and with art and with creativity and with music and with writing and that's all something you're creating, right?
Yeah.
Like that's in your power. So there is some power
Yeah.
to being artistic, being musical, because
Yeah.
it's all your own. And no one can really take that away from you. So that's why when that asshole said something
Yeah.
to you about your horse picture,
Picture. So
he
nervous.
was trying, and but that's the thing he doesn't know. You can't take creativity away from someone.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
You've no control over someone's creativity.
Yep.
It's
Mhm.
You can't. You
all
can't.
in here. And you know what? He probably hated it.
Hated
He
that. He
probably
hated
hated
it.
it.
Yes. I mean, he would go in our room sometimes and just for no reason tear things up or break things. And when we come home, he would never say anything about it, but we come home from school or we come home from church and we go in our rooms, stuff was missing or torn up or broken or smashed, or he'd take it and he'd put it in their room. And then we go to look for it and he'd be like, you touch it, that's mine. Take it and watch me break your hand. And it would just be random shit that meant nothing to him. You know, oh, we found a rock and we colored the rock and we put the rocks on the desk. And he's take the rock. It's
Oh,
like, what is
but
this?
your
What is this?
creativity and your accomplishment, by him taking it, it was like it was his.
Yeah,
Like
and he
I would
wanted
have
to
taken
remind
that
me that he owned me.
sticker.
Yeah,
I would have taken that sticker that that teacher gave you, and I would have stuck it on his fucking forehead while he was sleeping, and been like,
here you
"There,
go, dude. Yeah,
there's the
since you
sticker."
wanted so much.
Yeah, like he
Excellent.
was trying to steal your accomplishment,
Yeah, he was
right,
trying to
and
steal
make
my
it his
joy.
own.
He was trying to steal our joy. He would have these moments where he wanted to be a part of it, but they were fleeting. But most of the time he didn't want it. He didn't want to see it. He didn't want to hear about it. He didn't want to think about it. And he wants to have it. And it felt like he was jealous of it. And
He
it
was
felt like
jealous of it.
instead of a father who's proud and happy to see his children and his wife joyful, it was more like, y'all, I didn't have it. Y'all don't have
You're
it.
not gonna have it.
You're not gonna
Yeah,
have it.
For
And
sure.
it was
or
weird.
I'm gonna make it mine, right?
Yes, or I'm gonna
Or
own
I'm
it.
gonna shit all over it, right? Like it's
Exactly.
gonna be one of the two.
Exactly.
Because
Yep.
don't
Yeah.
think that there are, and this is Katie, I'm not even gonna get into this. Don't think there aren't parents out there who aren't jealous of their kids
Yes. Oh my God. Yes, for sure.
because they're doing
100%.
stuff that they never
They
did,
didn't
or they're
do.
doing things they always wanted to do.
They did.
Don't think there aren't parents out there that even
Absolutely.
though they love their children,
There's
they
good
also
and
kind of hope their children fail.
fail. Yeah, because they're
Because then
miserable
it
and
like
they need more.
evens the playing field,
Yeah.
and it exists,
Yeah.
and I've seen it.
Yeah.
So he was, I mean, that was it's an immature infantile reaction to
Yeah.
you doing something well
Yeah.
that he can't do. But
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
it
shit
splits
happens.
you too. You know, Katie, you were talking about being in a situation, just trying to survive, you know, and like you're
Mhm.
talking about, he's taking the joy, but I felt it's so funny. We talk about imposter syndrome and we talk about I talk about it in the sense of like sometimes even to this day, I feel so nervous when someone asks me to do something or when I got invited to WGU, I'm thinking, who, me? You want me to present, speak to you? Why me? Kind of a thing. And I'm like, wait, that can't be right. Does she have the right person? She's talking about me. It's like, I always
What's wrong with
question
you?
that. You're never sure, you know, and I'm always nervous and I'm always uncertain and I'm always, you know, and I've gotten better over the years with that. But one thing I know is that growing up like that, you get split into sometimes 2, 3, or 4 different personas or personalities. You have to be a certain way. So when you went to school, you didn't want everybody to know that you just left this horrible situation where you might have come to school and my mom was being beat that morning and they kicked us out of the house and locked the doors. Like, don't come back, go to school, get the hell out of here. And she's crying in the window. And so you're thinking, we're standing outside. Like, do we go to school? Do we not go? So then you go to school and you have to kind of just go to school and be at school and
Do
go to
that,
class.
be that
And,
person,
and
right?
about the research. Yeah, you got to act. You got to be an actress and be in class, all that stuff. And the whole time you got this dread. Or, you know, when I had my little jobs and I worked at Burger King, I worked at 7-Eleven when I was like 14. And, yeah, it's like, you go to work and you're just kind of like, hey, you know, just trying to be that person, you know, or you have friends that you want to like you and you don't want to lose them and you don't want them to know because they may not be the neighborhood kids, so they don't know what's going on. So you try to be something else for them. So you lie and you make up these stories about what your father does, what your mom does, or how your life is. And then whenever they want to come over to the house, you're like coming up with all kinds of excuses. So you
Yeah.
end up being like 4 or 5 different people just trying to create these personas to stay away. But the beauty of that sometimes is that some of those personas feel very protecting, feel very like, why not? This story that I've made up could possibly be real at some point. Why, it's not the real reality, but why not? Kind of a thing. Though even doing those kinds of things, which sometimes I felt like I was lying, I felt bad about it, but at the same time, it felt kind of fun to engage in this sort of acting because it was an escape, but then also it gave me a sense of, that could be a thing. Why
That
couldn't
could
I
be
have
pretty cool if that
Right,
actually
that could be a
happened.
thing, which made me feel like, okay, my reality at the time is what it is, but that doesn't necessarily mean it has to stay that way. And so that always was a little bit of hope that, that I think was a sense of protection. So no matter what he was doing, no matter how miserable things were, no matter how heavy and sunken in and dug in and stuck I felt, there was still a part of me that was still like, it's gonna be okay. You're gonna get away from this. It's gonna be okay. You're gonna get out of here. You're gonna figure out a way to do this. It's just gonna take time. You're exhausted. You're tired. Well, we'll figure out a plan. Don't give up. Don't let go. And the time was passing. You'd be like, well, it's been 4 years. It's been 5 years. It's been 6 years. I'm 19 now. It's not gonna happen. Yeah, but there was still something there, and then as crazy as this is gonna sound, and my sister and I both had this conversation, and she agrees with me. And it's such an odd thing to say. I used to pray all the time, and so did she. And she said, we used to pray all the time. God, get us out of here, change our situation. What are we going to do? Come save us. Something needs to change. Something's going to happen. And I didn't know it until we talked about it, but she and I both felt the same guilt because once my mother disappeared and that happened, it changed our situation like that. And then all of a sudden, there were these outlets and opportunities to possibly, so to speak, quote unquote, get out and get away. I don't believe I would have left or been the person I am talking to you right now if my mother was still alive and in that situation. I don't think I don't think I would have gotten out of there. I'd be a totally different person if I was still alive today. Her being removed from us, as painful and as horrifying and horrible as that was the strangest sort of blessing in disguise. And that may sound very horrific to people.
No, it doesn't.
I never want to lose my mom. If I could get my right arm to get her back today, I would. But there's something about that situation where, and we both, my sister and I, felt such tremendous guilt because we prayed for something. And we always laugh about how, and I tell my kids this all the time. My daughter will be like, I'm trying to be patient, Mom. I'm praying for patience. I'm praying for courage, but it's not happening. I'm like, well, let me tell you how the universe works. You pray for courage. The universe doesn't just snap its fingers and make you courageous. It doesn't just snap its fingers and make you patient. It puts you in a situation where you now have to learn patience or practice courage. So be careful what you're asking for, kind of a thing. And that's how I experienced it. And so for me, I was like, for the longest time, my sister told me for the longest time, she was so afraid that she was the reason that happened to my mom because she prayed for us to be out of that situation. And then she didn't pray correctly. She blamed herself and said, I should have prayed, save us, but save my mom too, and help be specific. We need to get out together. Don't take her away from us and create the situation we get out. And it was such a horrible thing for me to hear that she struggled with that pain for many, many years. And then we had the conversation and I discovered that I had some of those same horrific kind of thoughts and feelings and frustrations. And then I had such guilt afterwards because going to college and meeting my husband and having my kids and getting to travel and getting to be this person that I felt I always could be, but then also feeling like I'm lying because people don't know my true story. So that's not who I really am. It was just so much.
I feel like it's a gift. I feel like it's a legacy. I feel like it's a legacy.
It is. And I will tell you right now, all of us being mothers, I mean, if someone came to me right now and said, if you die right now, I will guarantee that your children will find healing and happiness and love and family. And if you don't, they might not survive. I'd be like, take me.
Yep.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat.
100%. 100%.
And Stephanie, I'm sure, I mean, I really think from everything you've shared about this woman, this wonderful woman that was your mother, that did the best she absolutely could.
She did. She did.
If somebody, I'm sure there isn't a doubt that she's like, it was worth it. Look at my kids.
Yeah.
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 No, I think that, I'm not even gonna add to it. You're totally right,
Yeah.
Katie. Totally right. All right, gang.
Ugh,
Any
Right.
final thoughts before we end, before Katie has to go eat like a frozen cake or whatever the hell you're doing?
I
It's a
appreciate
birthday
you guys
time.
so much. Thank you guys so much for this. This is
Thank
you
you.
know, it's I talk about this stuff all the time, and I engage with people about it, and I try to help and be supportive, but this whole series has kind of reminded me that I try not to lose myself and say, oh, that's all behind me now. I'm this perfect person now. And so I'm not. But it reminds me that what happened and where I came from is still very much a part of who I am and helped me build, and integrate it into who I am. I don't like to
Mhm.
separate it off and say that was the old me. That's not me anymore. And so
You've
it's
already lived in fragmentations of
yes,
yourself. You don't need to do that.
yes,
Yeah.
very much so. And so when I have these moments, even though they can be somewhat emotional and painful, I value them because it helps me stay connected to it. I know it sounds weird, but it does. And so
It doesn't
No,
sound
it's
weird at all.
not. I think if
thank
we take it, whether it was good, bad, beautiful, it's yours.
yeah,
And
yes,
we're very quick to have people share their wonderful childhood stories and everything. And sometimes we're hesitant because we don't want to stir things up or hurt people or, but it's still yours.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
yours. So separate
yeah,
from what the experience, it's yours. So you should talk about it. You should own it. Every
yeah,
single part of you, not just pieces of you. Yeah.
absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely.
thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you,
Thank,
Stephanie.
thank you guys. You guys are fantastic.
Oh my goodness.
Thank
Well,
you,
the
Stephanie.
invitation is the open
Always
door. It is
open.
an open door.
Awesome,
Yeah.
Open
awesome,
door policy. Open door policy. I
And
would
feel
love to
free
get
to
like
bring
a
friends.
that'd be a
feel
nice.
free to bring friends.
Bring
No, we're gonna
friends.
stay in touch.
Yes, for
Yes, for
sure,
sure. My
absolutely.
pleasure.
Absolutely.
All right. I'm
Thank
not
All
you
right.
eating a
guys so
frozen
much.
cake. I'm defrosting a frozen cake. Okay.
But
Goodbye.
and now it's dinner
Goodbye,
time and
guys.
the whole thing. All right. Good night, and everyone
Take
have a
Bye,
great
care.
week.
Good
guys.
night.
All
I
right.
appreciate you so much. Bye,
All right.
guys.
Bye.
Take care.